Jonas Reed stood in the fading light of day, his calloused hands gripping the rough wooden handle of his plow. The sun hung low on the horizon, casting long shadows across his struggling farm in the heart of Willow Creek. Rows of corn, once vibrant and green, now appeared weary, their leaves curling slightly at the edges, whispering hints of drought and an insistent lack of nourishment. He could feel the weariness seep into his bones, every creaking joint a reminder of the relentless labor and the burdens he carried, not just of daily toil, but the weight of dwindling hope as the bills piled high on the kitchen table like unsown seeds waiting for rain. Though his back ached and his bank account lingered on the brink of despair, Jonas held steadfastly to the values instilled in him by generations of forebears. Kindness had been the very cornerstone of their lives, binding them to the land and to each other. He believed that a shared meal could turn even the harshest day into some small celebration, and that a simple act of generosity could create ripples in a community suffering together. These beliefs shaped a man who, despite the challenges life threw his way, stood firm in his conviction that there was always enough, if not in material wealth, then in spirit. It was during those hardest days, as spring melted into the sweltering grip of summer, when Jonas decided to extend a hand, even when his own pockets ran thin. A fierce storm had swept through the valley a few weeks prior, demolishing half of the crops of his neighbors, the Wilsons, the Hargroves, and more. Families who had shared in joys and sorrows at the community barn dances, women who had swapped recipes over steaming pots of stew, men who had toiled together in the fields. Now their fates hung precariously by a thread, dangling in the face of a troubling drought. So one evening, as the sun melted into the horizon, offering splashes of color across a bruised and weary sky, Jonas made a decision. He heated his buckets and filled them with fresh ears of corn, the golden kernels shining like little drops of sunlight. There was little he could spare, but he cultivated a heart that sang louder than his empty pockets. With the scent of sweet earth clinging to his clothes and the weight of love in his chest, he loaded his meager harvest into his battered truck and set off toward the Wilsons' homestead. When he arrived, the sight within the yard gripped him. Garden tools lay abandoned, and sunflowers leaned their weary heads downward, as if mourning what could have been. Knocking gently on the door, he was greeted by Clara Wilson, her eyes red-rimmed from worry, but they widened with a flicker of surprise and hope when she saw the bounty in his arms. "Oh, Jonas, you shouldn't," she began, but he cut her off with a wave. "It's just corn, Clara. You and the kids need it more than I do," he said, his voice steady though his heart raced. Time stretched like the dry earth beneath there. These were desperate moments where pride became a luxury neither could afford. Tears sprang to Clara's eyes. "You're a good man, Jonas. We'll pay you back, you know that? We promise." He chuckled softly, the sound as dry as the land around them. "No need for that. We're all in this together, aren't we?" And with each step down the porch, he felt a lifting of the burden in his chest, as if he had planted a new seed, one that held the potential for kindness to bloom in the years ahead. As he returned home under the expanding blanket of stars, the twilight air seeped into his skin, and he breathed deeply of the scent of earth, of possibility, and of hope. That one small act tethered him to the heart of Willow Creek, more profound than any financial reward. Unbeknownst to him, those simple kernels of corn would grow into something far greater than just sustenance. They would sow the seeds of a community bound together by gratitude, kindness, and the unshakable belief that even in deepest of hardships, a hand reached out could spark a transformation that crossed not just their fields but the very essence of their lives. Days turned into weeks, and while Jonas tended to his farm, diligently patching the fault lines Mother Nature had drawn across his land, there were glimpses of change taking shape in the hearts of those he had once helped. Neighbors found inventive ways to repay the kindness, be it in the form of a shared harvest or a promise to pass on generosity to someone else in need. It was a web, slowly but surely, weaving resilience into the fabric of life in Willow Creek. And as he watched the cycles of the seasons spin their dance, Jonas couldn't help but reflect on the connections that sprouted from his giving. Little did he know, years would pass like whispers through the trees, and that one selfless act of sharing would someday bring unexpected bounty back to his own family, nurturing roots that would run deeper than despair, tying together past struggles with the radiant promise of the future. Indeed, kindness was a seed worth planting, and what grew from it was far more than he had ever dared hope for. As the summer days melded quietly into autumn, the warm palette of rust and gold swept through the valley, painting the rolling landscape in hues of hope. The chirping crickets and the laughter of children echoed softly in the cool evenings, serving as reminders that life continued to pulse vibrantly, even in the face of hardship. For Jonas Reed, the act of kindness he had given Clara Wilson began to blossom, filling not just their bellies, but the hearts of all those affected by drought's cruel grasp. The turning of the seasons also brought forth a fresh gust of productivity in the community. Clara, her spirit uplifted by Jonas' generosity, rallied the families of Willow Creek. With newfound determination, they organized a harvest festival, with the intent of bringing the community together to celebrate what they still had, showcase resilience in their collective struggle, and to gather funds for those most in need. It was an idea filled with exuberance, and soon it began to pick up speed like the wild winds that would often tear through the valley. Jonas found himself swept up in the spirit of it all, his heart swelling at the thought of how one small act had triggered such a profound response. Each Sunday, he would gather with his neighbors at Clara's front porch to stitch together plans for the festival. Laughter rang out freely, breaking through the shadows of worry that had gathered in the corners of their lives. Clara's children, Levi and Emma, would dart around the yard, collecting leaves and flowers as makeshift decorations. A few weeks before the festival, Jonas caught wind of an opportunity that would take their community dreams one step further. The town mayor, Eleanor Bascom, had announced that they would be offering matching funds to any community initiative that raised over $2,000. The idea gripped Jonas's heart like a tidal wave. If they could combine their resources, the ripple effects of kindness could lead to a substantial financial transformation, helping families who had been neglected by traditional agricultural support systems. Lucas Hargrove, another neighbor who had lost his crops to the storm, joined Jonas during one of their Sunday meetings. "If we can pull together the donations, why don't we also host a local market? Most of us have goods in our gardens, even if they're not perfect, plenty of folks would buy fresh produce," Lucas suggested. "Absolutely," Clara chimed in, her eyes brightening. "It would remind us that we're still a community that cherishes each other's strengths, imperfections, and all." With the festival date fast approaching, they set to work. With each passing day, Jonas felt his own burdens lighten. Helping others unearthed a portion of joy he had kept buried, and he could see how it galvanized everyone around him. The festival into an unexpected carnival of laughter, resourcefulness, and genuine relationships that pulled deeper than financial struggles. As they prepared, Jonas decided to invest a little more of himself into the event, carving intricate wooden signs that directed visitors toward stations that sold canned goods, handmade crafts, and fresh farm produce. It wasn't a vast sum of money that could soothe his own financial woes, but it did feel like a humble tribute to the kindness that had initiated this beautiful wave. The big day finally arrived, and Jonas awoke to a sky streaked with pink and gold. He dressed quickly and stepped outside, greeted by the sense of blooming wildflowers and the distant sound of music filtering in from the town square. It felt as if the valley held its breath, ready to exhale all at once, a pent-up longing for camaraderie and connection molded by compassion. From the moment he stepped onto the field, he was enveloped by a tide of smiling faces. They buzzed with excitement, laughter, and spirited conversations. Clara's booth overflowed with her homemade jams and sun-dried tomatoes, while others paraded their crafts, honey jars, hand-stitched quilts, painted pots, vegetables, even artisanal breads. The warmth of their successes wrapped around Jonas like a comforting blanket, reminding him of the power this community held when bound by kinship. As the sun rose high in the sky, Jonas marveled at how many people were rallying together, working to create the impact they had sought. The sweet clicks of cash registers registered the awe of the laughter-strewn field, and he remembered the moment he decided to share his bounty. For it had inspired such a flurry of activity, breathing life into those struggling to keep their heads above water. Amidst the festivity, a woman overcame her initial shyness, approaching Jonas. "Are you the one who started this?" she asked, her admiration palpable. "I've been looking around for local produce to support our farmers, and I bought Clara's jam, amazing stuff." Jonas felt warmth bloom within him, a proud smile unfurling. "All of us did it together, really. It's been overwhelming, for sure." Later, another visitor shared how he had heard about the festival and had come to help. He owned a local catering business and wanted to support the community after struggling through his own financial challenges. He offered to cook at the festival for free in exchange for a booth to sell his sandwiches and salads with donated ingredients. The attendees thrived on the willing spirit of hospitality and community, and as they dove into one another's stories, the financial connections began to ripple outward, former strangers blossoming into new partnerships. By the time dusk draped its velvet cloth over the valley, celebrations bubbled in an exhilarating crescendo. With laughter rising higher than the sun-kissed horizon, Clara climbed onto a makeshift stage and announced with bubbling, "Thanks to your support today, not only did we raise enough funds for the families in need, but we were also able to meet the matching funds from the town, $4,000 in total." Gasps and cheers erupted across the field, resonating like a jubilant symphony. Jonas felt the weight in his chest lift entirely, swept away by the joyous tide. As if the universe conspired to grant further blessings, a familiar face stepped forward to speak with Clara, a local bank manager who had been watching the day unfold. "This festival shows true community spirit," he remarked, his eyes glimmering with warmth. "I'd like to sponsor a small loan program to help families who can't afford to plant crops next season. We need to boost our local agriculture, and I felt inspired watching you all today." Hope flared brighter than ever, pacing a dance of epiphany around Jonas's heart. The pain of the past began to crumble like autumn leaves, replaced with a commitment to nourish the lives of others. In that, he perceived the true essence of financial transformation, not solely in the relief of debts lifted but in the forging of connections that cultivated resilience. Days later, Jonas heard the crisp crack of autumn leaves underfoot as he walked to his barn in a light drizzle, convinced that kindness had already transformed their lives. Now they had sparkled their way into action. Suddenly, a flicker on the edge of his farm caught his eye, neighbors converging, each bearing gifts of fresh produce, gleaming jugs of honey, and baskets full of presents. As they arrived, symbols of gratitude glimmered in their arms, a beautiful homage to the way kindness had wound its tendrils through their lives. "Jonas," Clara called cheerily ahead of the crowd. "We just wanted to say thank you, and we brought you something special for the hard work you put into the festival. Your selflessness has led us to deeper connections, and we can't wait to see what the spring holds." With that, they revealed freshly baked pie, the sweet aroma of berries dancing among the air, adorned with a handwritten card. Underneath heartfelt notes from each family it read, "In gratitude, from the families of Willow Creek." Jonas's heart melted as he held the warm dessert close, realizing that kindness radiated not just in monetary funds, but in the tight-knit corners of their relationships, a comfort that stretched beyond dollars raised, infusing life with resilience and integrity. He could hardly believe how far the ripples traveled from that small act of kindness. Indeed, the festival had stitched together a community so deeply intertwined that no drought or storm could shake their roots. With every heartbeat, the spirit of generosity thrummed loudly, heralding a brighter tomorrow rooted in love and connection, ready to overcome any challenges that would come their way. As winter settled over Willow Creek, the landscape transformed into a serene wonderland blanketed in snow, each tiny flake a of hope that glistened in the sunlight. Houses adorned with wreaths and twinkling lights illuminated the community, infusing the crisp air with an almost magical warmth as families prepared for the holiday season. For Jonas, the holidays had always been a time of reflection, and this year felt particularly poignant. He often found himself pondering the chain of events triggered by that simple act of kindness, the sharing of corn with Clara Wilson. The ripple effects of his decision had sparked courage among his neighbors, deepening their collective bond and sowing seeds of resilience that flourished amid adversity. As he stared out at his modest farmhouse, he marveled at how community had woven itself into a living tapestry of cooperation, lifting them all higher than they could have imagined, especially during those difficult months. Inspired by the festival's success, he harnessed that collective spirit and focused on expansion. With the seed money from the fundraiser matched by the local government, he had intentionally redirected those resources into sustainable practices on his farm. This decision opened the door to a burgeoning partnership with Clara's family, who now shared in the daily labor, discovering joy and purpose in their collaboration. They cultivated not only crops but dreams, each day a testament to the power of pooled labor and connection. One crisp December morning, Jonas awoke with a sense of purpose. He met Clara as the sun streamed through their window, casting golden light over the kitchen table where plans for the spring planting began to take form. Digging deeper, they joked, their laughter ringing like chimes. He knew that their farm would not just be a place of growing crops but a hub for the community. They envisioned seasons filled with crops, but also workshops teaching neighbors about sustainable practices, cooking classes utilizing their harvest, and avenues for sharing their bounty with those who needed it most. And just as Jonas took steps to expand his farm through shared knowledge and efforts, he also thought of ways to give back and remind families in Willow Creek of the spirit of kindness that had sparked all of this transformation. Tapping into connections forged through the Harvest Festival, he coordinated community days, where families could gather not only to plant seeds but to nurture dreams. Each week, they would share stories, support businesses, and learn how to maximize resources creatively, ruminating on how they could assist those still trapped under stress and isolation. The following months brought surprising growth. Gardens sprawled joyfully across backyards, children filled their afternoons with laughter and play, and neighbors traded goods like they had taken vibes straight from old-fashioned barter systems. With every hand that reached down into the soil, the relationships dug deeper, even as financial pressures began to lift. Community members found purpose in there, each planting helping to push away shadows of doubt and despair. The financial transformation blossomed naturally. As crops emerged stronger than before, beets, carrots, pastas, and fresh herbs, Jonas had cultivated not just the land but a bond that embraced all. With Clara and others, they soon enjoyed fruitful harvests that provided for their families and allowed abundant produce to flood the local market. It drew customers from neighboring towns, each transaction a testament to their hard work and commitment to uplift one another. Jonas marveled at the tangible growth. The farm had doubled in yield, and profits trickled in. But the true success lay in the community that had rebuilt itself one act of kindness at a time. People returned to his farm, sharing delightful new recipes or suggestions on crop rotations that could maximize his land. Those connections spun stories of their own, stories that fed into family table discussions, merging into the fabric of their lives. As the holidays approached, Jonas felt a wave of gratitude wash over him. Perhaps it was the spirit of the season, but he awakened to the realization that this year's holiday gathering would be different. They would not just celebrate their prosperity, they would also strengthen their commitment to kindness, giving back to those in the community who were still facing hardship. With Clara and their friends rallying behind him, he coordinated a community potluck on Christmas Eve. Each family could bring a dish crafted from their gardens, but they would also gift a food basket or a warm meal to those struggling to make ends meet. The idea ignited conversation after conversation at the local diner, where they shared laughter over cups of steaming coffee. Soon, news spread of the upcoming event, igniting an excitement that spread like wildfire. As Christmas lights glimmered against the cold night sky, families gathered joyfully at the local town hall, a warm beacon amid the chill. The aroma of made bread, roasted vegetables, and warm cider wrapped around them like a comforting hug, creating an atmosphere where laughter filled the corners of the room and no soul felt alone. At the front of the hall stood a large, beautifully decorated table. Jonas had arranged it thoughtfully, filled with handmade cards and shelves of baskets overflowing with goods, fresh vegetables, fruit preserves, and even carefully crafted gingerbread houses made by eager young hands. In that moment, as Clara spoke to the gathering, her eyes bright and her voice strong, Jonas felt a swell of pride. They were contributing to far more than material needs, they were embracing the core values that had crossed the landscape of their lives, weaving an unbreakable bond of empathy and love. "We have lifted our community up out of hardship together," Clara asserted. "We rise by lifting others, and tonight we share not just a meal but our stories, our hopes, and our joy." Jonas felt a palpable energy move over the room, a tide of hope emanating, growing stronger with each story shared, each smile exchanged. As laughter rang out and children raced about, he turned to Clara, expression brimming with gratitude. "Thank you for believing we could do this together," he whispered. Her eyes sparkled back at him. "No, Jonas. Thank you for planting that seed in the first place. You reminded us of our potential, our strength as one." That night, as families filled the hall, the spirit of giving poured forth effortlessly. When the evening came to a close, nearly a dozen families received baskets that promised warmth. The holiday cheer washed over Jonas, knowing that this collective act of kindness felt not only rewarding but full of promise, a promise to each other, to lift one another as they ventured ahead into a new year. When the snow began to fall gently, blanketing the rooftops in silent anticipation of a fresh start, Jonas stood at the window of his home, warmed by the glow of the lights that he felt a profound connection to the heart of Willow Creek beat in time with his own. Time moved on, but the values he had cherished, the spirit of kindness and the bonds formed through shared labor, remained immutable. As spring approached once more, Jonas knew that he had not just sown seeds in the earth, he had helped plant the idea that kindness can blossom even in the harshest of climates. He glanced out at the horizon, excited to see the pulse of life slowly returning to the valley. A canvas of green awaited him, promising another opportunity to nurture growth, not only in crops but in the hearts of those who lived and breathed the rich tapestry of community around him. Jonas smiled, the warmth of gratitude swelling inside, knowing he was now a small part of a much larger story, one that intertwined resilience, kindness, and hope into a legacy that would inspire generations yet to come. With that thought firmly rooted in his mind and heart, he stepped away from the window, ready to embrace a new day with the promise that the cycle of kindness would continue, flourishing endlessly in all the lives it touched.